I like to just have a bar during the stage or have something to chew on. And so I'll do that kind of in the middle portion, and then in the last couple hours it'll just only be gels.
What about on training days? Are you focused so you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want? How's that shape up? Say you're doing a 5 hour ride with some efforts.
On training, I'm definitely a little bit more relaxed about it. So, in races, I'll have a super strict, I'll be feeling a lot on the bike, um, compared to training where it's a bit more, day by day, depends what session I have. If I just have an easy 5 hour endurance ride, then I'll kind of just go a little more off the cuff and, have a bit of a bigger breakfast, maybe not eat for the first 2 hours of the ride, and then really feel based off of, when I'm hungry, then eating, um, not being too caught up on like, X amount of grams per hour. Um, and I think that depends on the session because then if I really have a hard day, like say it's those 5 by 3 minute efforts and they're going to come after 3,000 kilojoules, then I'll really be sharp on, starting with 2 bottles, maybe with sugar water in there. So 100 grams per bottle, have that over the first 3 hours, 4 hours of the ride, and then really be feeling the work that I'm doing. So if it's a key session, I'll definitely focus more on nutrition. And if it's just endurance ride or a shorter ride under 3 hours, I'll be a bit more relaxed about it. But in training, I tend to do more of I'd rather have a bigger breakfast and a bigger lunch than eating more on the bike. Um, and that's something that's really different to the races because in the races, a lot of the times, like at the Grand Tours and the 1 week races, we're on this program called personalized plates. So the breakfast is tracked and then the lunch is tracked and the that's based on what you're feeling with during the race. So you send your race intake to the nutritionist
Hmm.
and then around that they'll calculate the meals that you need. So when I'm doing that, I definitely find that my breakfast is smaller than I would have at home, say, before I go out training. Um, but then as a result, I feel more on the bike and it feels, I feel really like that's when I'm at my best. But just when I'm at home and relaxed in a relaxed environment, I tend to kind of prefer just to have a bigger breakfast and then not eat so much on the bike, just to let my stomach, rest a bit.
That's really interesting. What's the reception to this personalized plates program amongst your teammates and other people having it pretty like divvied out for them?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
If I could live on this program, I would live on it.
Oh, I was not expecting that answer. Cool. Just because
Yeah,
it's
no,
simple or in like they're taking care
yeah,
of all the details?
it's just amazing. Like I think it's really, obviously at the highest level, nutrition is incredibly important. And at a grand tour, I actually don't know how. Like if it was a buffet and I was serving myself, I think it would be really hard to manage weight during a grand tour because it's just like so much energy expenditure every day. Um, but then also, some days the energy expenditure isn't as big as you think. Maybe that's because you had a big day the day before, um, or vice versa. But I mean, I've always been someone that was kind of like, yeah, I mean, as a junior and under 23, it was just like, night before the race, your plate better be heaped with pasta and like, you don't leave the table until you're full. And that's just, why did you do it? I don't know. You just do it because you have to carbo load. Like that's what you were told. And I've definitely found through personalized plates and then kind of experimenting with what works best for me, like you actually don't need to be, as carbo loaded as I think it's a bit overhyped. Like, I think a lot of times you're probably eating more than you need to in terms of like loading up on carbs. Like if you're, if you're dialed in the few days before the race, like you shouldn't be coming in depleted enough that you really need to like overcompensate with carbs. And I think obviously now in the races, the carb intake is going way up compared to what it was a few years ago. So I think, with all those factors combined, it kind of means that like I was saying, the breakfasts maybe aren't as big as you would think. And in the end, like you go to bed every night, and you're like, you feel like perfectly satiated, but not like stuffed, and you're not starving. And I think after 3 weeks, kind of being able to manage that, it just makes your life so much easier. And I know I have some friends and guys on other teams who, like, the way they'll do it is that the team cook will cook all the food, and then they'll get like a message or a PDF or something of like, you need X grams of pasta, X grams of sauce, and then they actually have to measure it out onto their plate. And I think that would crack me. Like, just, every day after the stage, coming back and having that extra bit of work to do, and in the morning, like having to weigh it out. I think it's just really mentally, saves you a lot of energy. Having your plate is there in the morning, what's on it, and it's enough, it's what you need. And yeah, you can just like enjoy the meal, and then head off to the race, and have faith in it. So that's something that's really, yeah, I found it to be important, and also really helpful in just knowing, like, okay, when I'm at home training, like, you get a sense for portion sizes, and um, at what meal you should be eating, different amounts, and that's just something that has really worked out for me. So I love it. If I could do it at home, I definitely would.
That's amazing. I love that. I'm curious if we'll see a course correction on some of the carb loading and just other guests that we've had that have not been the biggest fans. We've had a nutritionist that was questioning, where have these, 9 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight really come from, and theory versus in practice. So it's interesting to hear you say that of maybe these meals aren't as big as we would expect you to say of the heaping pasta that everybody talks about. So yeah, I appreciate that insight.